Sarah?
Yeah, this is such a big job. First of all, there weren't any pipes that were supposed to have anything. We didn't have any pipes there. There must be a tremendous amount of catch-up being played since we didn't think there were any pipes there in the first place. So it's probably putting us behind schedule of being able to deal with something like this. If this, for instance, is under the reactor, the core reactor, we might have to wait until spring to fix these pipes, and you're wanting us to commence immediately. I'm wondering if we could commence immediately if we found out that that's where they were, and looking to the future where, you know, this is an aging problem for metal. You know, metal fatigue we know is a potential real hazard for moving forward with any plant, because we haven't had one. We don't have any experience to draw from, because there aren't any that are that old. Can you imagine a scenario where we would have to replace all the pipes? And we might be seeing a whole bunch of stuff. The other problem I'm having is in terms of selecting a site for a nuclear power plant, I really hope in the future, with this nuclear renaissance that we're going to be having, that they have more thorough studies done of the hydrology and the geology, so that we're not caught with trying to get to the bottom of these issues now. I mean, I'm not impressed by the fact that, you know, maybe there's not a better soil analysis. How does water move through the soil, the rock, and just the nature of that topology, the topology that exists there now. And now we're having to go back and try to figure this out, because this is not a normal business. And this is something that we don't deal with every day. So there's a few questions in there. One, the commencing immediately piece. If it's under the core reactor building, and catching up because there weren't any pipes, and replacing all the pipes.
Right. Well, I can only address some of those because I don't know the answer to some of those. I can tell you that the reactor building goes to bedrock. Most of the buildings that contain the primary system components are foundationed in the bedrock, so there is no space between the building foundation and the bedrock. So anything in those buildings is within a building. The area where there's a lot of concern about underground pipes is outside of those buildings and near this advanced off-gas building. This advanced off-gas building is a building that was added to the plant in the earliest days of operation. And apparently it is not foundationed on the bedrock. And in fact, it is, for the most part, very close to the surface where its foundation exists. So there are most of the sources that are under investigation, as well as near this most contaminated well now, GZ7, are affiliated with that advanced off-gas building and the condensate storage tank there. So I think that those are a lot of pipes, and I think, again, Oldest Van Ags might be able to refer to the capacity of the station to replace pipes and what their aging process is for replacing pipes. I don't want to surmise that. Our job in public health is to verify that if pipes are leaking, we are a part of measuring what is getting out and protecting the public from it.
Getting back to the measuring part, are these stable formulas that we're using, or are these formulas that are likely to be changed throughout the process, such as what happened with the fence line radiation indication, where I know that we went from one formula that we were working on over time, and then that, I'm not asking about the specifics of the formula, I'm just asking, we changed our formula midstream when we were looking at fence line radiation, and that got switched to a different formula, which made the monitoring that we were doing before sort of inaccurate. I'm wondering if these are stable formulas or if they are going to be subject to reevaluation and change So is this data that we're getting going to be under one formula, and we're not going to change the formula by which we're investigating the data samples? Because I know we had that problem with defense line radiation.
The means by which we determine what the concentration of tritium is and how that relates to dose is not changed.
So different from measuring radiation. Okay, thank you.
Rachel?
To the best of your knowledge, do any of the potential sources of the leak contain only treated water? Or so in other words, are most of the potential sources containing multiple radionucleotides, or are there potential sources that contain only tritiated water?
That's a good question, and it actually is important in the investigation process as well as what the potential health impacts are. There are possibilities that the eventual source, if it's found, is predominantly tritium. And those would be sources where the tritium is coming from the condensation of tritiated water vapor in air on surfaces, and then as you might see in a cave or maybe in your shower stall where you get condensation on the ceiling and it drips into the basin there, that behavior occurs in plant systems. Currently they're evaluating as a source what's called the HVAC duct, heating, ventilation, air conditioning duct. It's a 6-foot diameter concrete pipe that runs from all of the buildings to the plant stack. And within that, warm air passes. And that warm air interfacing with cold concrete pipe can cause condensation inside there. And for the most part, what you would find in the water that condenses and settles in the low parts of that pipe would be primarily tritium, because it's being pulled out of the air as opposed to coming out of a source of reactor coolant water. There was a source that was investigated in the rat waste trench that had that similar behavior. And there is a possibility that this find in GZ7 of just tritium is indicative of a source that is primarily tritium and does not have high levels of other radioisotopes as we would expect with reactor water. But we don't know that until we get closer to the source or we actually find a source. And again, until we know these things, we have to really work on the basis that it is likely to be a source that contains all of those constituents and potentially in higher concentrations.
Tim?
I'm looking at GZ7 on the map and its proximity to the AOG building. Can you imagine from a health perspective an outcome where there is no repair? I mean, could it be possible that it's determined that it's somewhere under that building or somewhere else that's now contained? Could you imagine containment as a possible step? It's possible we never know.
I don't want to rule it out, but I think that they will find source, and yet we're just really early in this whole investigation. There's a possibility that a source is not found. It may be that this source, that what is being measured now in this well is something that occurred a long time ago, and that it was only recently that it migrated gradually to a well that was sunk in 2007, and therefore the actual event that caused it would have occurred in the past, and the location of that source does go unfound. It's a possibility.